Coach Lora Erickson with blonderunner.com. Today I wanted to go through and talk about how you take apart your bike and then how you put your bike back together to go in a bike box for traveling for races. I just came home from Ironman Maryland and I'm putting my bike back together, and I wanted to go through that. So it'll kind of be taking it apart, putting it back together. There's a lot of clips out there. I don't think they're quite as thorough. This will be fairly thorough, and one thing I will say is there's different kinds of bike boxes and there's also different kinds of bikes. So that will kind of vary a little bit on what you do, but I am no bike mechanic, but I have to travel with my bike, and I'm an athlete and I have to put it back together, and I've learned how to do it. It was a little intimidating at first, especially I don't know if other women like to do mechanicals on their bike more than me, but I don't really, that's not my thing. But I have learned how to do it, and I want to share what I know. So if you have to do it, you can do it. So the first thing I usually do when taking apart my bike is I take my pedals off. And the reason that I'm actually using a speed play pedal, and so I've got them here. I put them in a little baggie with a wrench that I use to get them off. There's several ways you can get them off, but the wrench I think is the best. The reason that I take them off is obviously it's easier for it to travel, but if the bike doesn't come with me, let's say I have a connection and my bike doesn't make it with me, I at least have pedals. So like if I have to borrow a bike, I at least have the pedals that match with my cleats that are on my shoes. Another thing I would say with travel is you want to make sure that you take everything on the plane with you need for your race, like what you're wearing to race in, your cleats, your shoes with cleats on them, your running shoes, your helmet, anything you need for the race, take it with you. Do remember to bring the tools that you need to put your bike back together as well. So for me, I know this wrench works for my pedals. So I do take them off. One thing you need to know about pedals is the right is right and the left is wrong. Why I say that is, on the right, normally when you tighten anything, it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. That's how the right pedal is. The left pedal is wrong, however. It's reverse thread. The left one is much easier to get off, by the way, because you can leverage the pedal using the wrench. The right one is trickier. I found that if I hold the crank on one side and then use my foot to put that pedal down, then, crank that wrench, then I can take it apart. And it goes, like I said, the right goes righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So we're going that direction. So that's the first thing I do. Take off my pedals. I put them in a little baggie. I use a lot of these little towels that are sturdy to wrap things in so they're not getting banged up. Plus that keeps them together, and I keep it with the wrench. The next thing I usually do is I like to take off the saddle. And before I even begin, some of the things that I take off my bike is my whatever saddlebag you have or you're going to take to the race, you want to take that, of course. And then any bento box that I have that has food, I take that off. I have a bike computer as well as using my Garmin 920 watch. And I take that off because I don't want it to be pushed on and like the battery dead when I use it for the race. So I take those things off. I take my saddle off as well. So you can see I have my saddle. I bubble wrap the crap out of everything so it doesn't get damaged in transit, but you'll want to take it off. Some of them are pretty easy to take off. You just use the lever. If not, one thing I will say, when you travel, you never know what you're going to run across, and something might loosen up, or maybe your back wheel is rubbing on your frame and you need to change that. That's usually an Allen wrench. I highly suggest just bringing a whole set of Allen wrenches. These are Allen wrenches. This is a set, it has all of them on there. So if I run into any problems, then I can do that. One other thing that you'll notice, and this is what I like to do before I actually take my bike apart, I like to remember how it went back together. I had it fit for me, so I want to make sure I get it back in the right spot. So you can see on the bottom here, I don't know if you can see it very well, I have marked how far up my saddle goes. This is the easiest thing to try to measure and remember the numbers. I just use a Sharpie, silver Sharpie, mark it, and then I'll know exactly where I put that saddle back on. So pedals off, saddle off. The next thing I do is I take my, you can see here, I have my my aero bars. This is a time trial bike, like I said. You can see I also use painter's tape. That's the best thing. It works well, and it doesn't pull off any of my paint, nor does it leave a lot of residue on my bike, which is, you know, I think it's sort of important for me. Anyway, you want it to look good, right? I tape the aero bars right to the frame. You can see I've got it hooked in here pretty good. And I take that off. I'll show you once I'll pull this out and probably stop this and then pull it out and show you how that works. One thing I want to show you about this particular bike box is an older bike box. There are lots of them out there. One thing I looked for with a bike box is, you know, you have the risk of damaging the bike when you travel. And so that's something you got to be concerned with. But this particular bike box, I don't know if you can see this, but it hooks actually right to this part of the bike, or the box. And so the danger is, see these forks not having anything attached in other boxes. This one actually attaches, so it's not a problem. But man, if you put too much pressure on those could break. So that's a concern. So look for that in your bike box, or you can actually buy skewers that kind of help protect your bike there, that keep them from being pushed in. So it's not your regular skewer. The next thing I do, so I'll show you how to do the aero bars in just a minute, but I take off, of course, the wheels. As the wheels, this particular case, I have some bags that the wheels go on. One thing I will tell you is you have to take the air out of the tires. You can risk, you know, especially if it's not in a pressurized, most of like the bikes and the bags and stuff aren't going to go into pressurized part of the plane. So with your tire, see, I've got it in the bag here. This is the back wheel. I have taken all the air out of it. So when I travel with it, it's not going to blow up on the plane. I'm not going to be running across a tire now that's damaged. So I do make sure and let out all the air in that. And for me, in terms of travel, I actually just carry this little tiny hand pump. It gets enough air in it. There's some air. Usually I borrow a pump and there's tons of them at any race, so I don't have to travel with my pump, but I just have that little one to give it a little air, so when I put the tires back on, I can see if it's not rubbing or anything. I do remove the skewers, take both wheels off. The other wheel is kind of hidden behind the bike here, but one thing I will say is you want to make sure you get those wheels back on the right direction. A lot of times I just put an arrow. Wheels or tires are thread a certain way, so you do need to get that back on the right way. Generally, if you can read the name on that front portion towards you, then that's right usually. But and of course the skewers will go to the left, like this part will go to the left side, opposite the side of where all your gear chain is and stuff. The next thing I do, so I've removed the pedals, I've taken off the wheels, I've taken off the saddle. Another thing you should do, a lot of people will detach their rear derailleur, and that's a good thing to do. And you can see here, I've bubble wrapped it a lot, but I've taken and I've wrapped the chain around that to protect it, and then that helps protect it. Another thing, let's see, that I like to do, of course you've got the wheels off. Let me make sure I cover everything. By the way, I'm going to have this written out on my website, so it'll have a step-by-step. So if you forget, this video will also be embedded there, so you can have that visual as well. But it'll have kind of, you can print it off and use it when you travel. So let's see, we talked about the derailleurs, the bags and the wheels, and getting the pressure or the air out of those, having Allen wrenches, making sure you have the other tools that you need. I mean, that's pretty much how you take it apart, making sure you've got it all situated good. We're gonna pause this for a minute. I'm gonna get it out so you can kind of see. I'll put some of it back together, but I'll show you some of that. So we'll pause it for a sec. Okay, here I'm back, and I put the back wheel on, and then I've left the front wheel off because it's a little easier to maneuver the bike. I'm straddling now the top tube, and I'm going to put my aero bars back on. Now, some people like to detach their aero bars by you know, taking them off the stem. I don't like to mess with that because that'll affect, you know, gear. That could affect a lot of other things in gearing and stuff. So with this, you do want to make sure that you've got all your cables going the right direction. None of them are kinked or anything, because those are your brake cables. But with this, you can see when I take them off and I put them to the side like you saw in the bag, I just take it off at the front portion here. And so here, you know, I put this back on so I'm not losing this piece. and these little screws. It's just an Allen wrench that takes that. So when I put it back on, I have actually marked these like I told you I did with the saddle and things. I mark them with that Sharpie, and then I'm going to line them up and put them back on. You don't have to line them up right away. Just as soon as you screw this back together, then you can line it up. So we'll screw these back on. There's 4 of them, and once I get that back together, I will show you how to get that front tire on. So hang tight, and I'll be right back.